Hello, my name is Jnb258 and today I will be presenting my research on implementing lean warehousing practices in Brazil supply chains, a case study. I'll be discussing how lean principles are applied in real-world warehousing within Brazil's supply chains, along with the potential improvements that could be made using these methodologies. Welcome to our critical analysis of lean warehouses in Brazil. Today, we will dissect the real-world application of lean practices in Brazilian warehouses based on Pereira et al.'s 2020 study. While lean principles are crucial for global competitiveness, their implementation in emerging markets like Brazil presents unique challenges. We will scrutinize the most prevalent practices, identify critical gaps, and propose data-driven improvements. It's important to note that while this study provides valuable insights, it's limited to 10 warehouses, which may not fully represent the entire Brazilian logistics sector. Our analysis aims to spark a deeper conversation about the strategic importance of lean practices in Brazilian warehousing and the potential consequences of lagging behind global standards. The study's mixed method approach, combining qualitative case studies with quantitative analysis, provides a multifaceted view of lean practices in Brazilian warehouses. However, we must critically examine the limitations of this methodology. The sample size of 10 warehouses, while diverse, may not capture the full spectrum of Brazilian warehousing operations. The use of expert evaluations introduces potential bias, as experts may have preconceived notions about ideal lean practices. The TOPSIS method, while sophisticated, relies on subjective weightings that could influence results. Despite these limitations, the study's rigorous approach offers valuable insights. As we proceed, we will consider how these methodological choices might impact the findings and their applicability to the broader Brazilian warehousing sector. The study examined 13 lean warehouse practices, covering a comprehensive range of operational aspects. This breadth is commendable, encompassing both foundational practices like 5S and advanced technologies like RFID. However, we must question whether this list fully captures the evolving nature of lean warehousing. For instance, the study doesn't explicitly mention practices related to sustainability or digital twin technology, which are becoming increasingly relevant. Moreover, the equal weighting of these practices in the study may not reflect their relative importance or difficulty of implementation. As we analyze the findings, we will need to consider how the selection and categorization of these practices might influence our understanding of lean adoption in Brazilian warehouses. It is crucial to view these practices not in isolation, but as part of an interconnected system of lean principles. The prevalence of warehouse organization, 5S culture, KPIs, and employee involvement initiatives in Brazilian warehouses reveals a focus on low-hanging fruit in lean implementation. While these practices are foundational, their dominance suggests a superficial adoption of lean principles. The preference for practices requiring minimal technological investment may indicate risk aversion of resource constraints. However, this approach could be short-sighted. By focusing on these basic practices, Brazilian warehouses may be missing out on the transformative potential of more advanced lean techniques. We must critically question whether this cautious approach is truly preparing Brazilian warehouses for future challenges in the global market. Are these warehouses building a solid foundation for lean, or are they merely engaging in lean theatre without fully committing to the philosophy? The significant gaps in implementing advanced lean practices are deeply concerning. The absence of RFID systems and cross-docking techniques, coupled with the early stages of TPM implementation, indicates a reactive rather than proactive approach to warehouse management. This lag in adopting sophisticated tools could severely hamper the efficiency and competitiveness of Brazilian warehouses. We must critically examine the root causes of this hesitancy. Is it purely a matter of cost, or are there deeper issues such as lack of expertise, resistance to change, or misalignment with short-term business goals? the consequences of this technological gap are potentially severe. As global competitors leverage these advanced practices to dramatically improve their operations, Brazilian warehouses risk falling further behind. This raises questions about the long-term viability of current Brazilian warehousing strategies in the global supply chain. The results paint a troubling picture of lean implementation in Brazilian warehouses. The focus on low investment, culturally oriented practices, while important, suggests a superficial engagement with lean philosophy. This approach aligns with Tortorella et al.'s findings on the challenges faced by emerging economies, but it also highlights a critical lack of strategic vision. The reluctance to invest in advanced technologies and practices may provide short-term cost savings, but it's likely to result in long-term competitive disadvantages. We must question whether Brazilian warehouse managers fully understand the holistic nature of lean philosophy. Are they truly committed to continuous improvement, or are they simply implementing isolated practices without a comprehensive strategy? This piecemeal approach to lean risks creating inefficiencies and may ultimately prove more costly than a full commitment to lean principles. The disparity between Brazilian warehouses and global trends in lean implementation is alarming. Lim et al.'s report on the significant growth of RFID implementation worldwide starkly contrasts with its absence in the studied Brazilian warehouses. This technology gap isn't just a matter of efficiency, it represents a fundamental divergence in operational capabilities. Brazilian warehouses are not just lagging, they are operating in a different technological era. This raises critical questions about the future of Brazilian logistics in the global supply chain. Can Brazilian warehouses remain relevant without these technologies? What are the implications for multinational companies considering Brazilian logistics partners? The competitive disadvantage is clear, but we must also consider the knock-on effects on Brazil's entire logistics sector and, by extension, its economy. This technological divide may widen rapidly if not addressed, potentially relegating Brazilian warehouses to second-tier status in global logistic networks. The barriers to implementing advanced lean practices in Brazilian warehouses are complex and interconnected. Economic uncertainty and cost constraints create a risk-averse environment, but this short-term thinking may exacerbate long-term challenges. The shortage of skilled workers is particularly troubling as it creates a catch-22 situation. Warehouses need expertise to implement advanced practices, but without implementing these practices, they struggle to attract or develop the necessary talent. Resistance to change, while a universal challenge, may be more pronounced in Brazil due to cultural factors and labor relations. The limited awareness of advanced lean tools benefits points to a critical failure in education and knowledge dissemination within the industry. We must question whether these barriers are truly insurmountable or if they are being used as excuses to avoid necessary but difficult changes. Are Brazilian warehouse managers doing enough to overcome these obstacles, or are they accepting them as immutable facts? While the challenges are significant, the opportunities for improvement in Brazilian warehouses are substantial. However, we must critically examine the feasibility and potential impact of these opportunities. Gradual implementation of RFID could indeed provide benefits, but is this incremental approach sufficient given the rapid pace of global advancement? The potential of cross-docking is clear, but its absence thus far suggests deeper systemic issues that may hinder its adoption. Employee training programs are crucial, but we must question whether Brazilian warehouses are willing to make the necessary long-term investments in human capital. Strategic partnerships with technology providers offer promise, but there's a risk of creating technological dependencies. Moreover, we must consider whether these improvements go far enough. Are Brazilian warehouses aiming for parity with global competitors? or should they be striving to leapfrog current technologies to gain a competitive edge? The proposed improvements are a start, but a more radical reimagining of the Brazilian warehousing may be necessary to truly close the gap. The case study of Taiwanese automotive parts company provides a compelling example of the potential benefits of integrated lean and technology implementation. However, we must critically examine its relevance to the Brazilian context. The automotive industry in Taiwan operates under different economic and regulatory conditions than Brazilian warehouses. The reported 27% reduction in inventory and 37% decrease in order fulfillment time are impressive, but we must question whether similar results are achievable in Brazil given the identified barriers. Moreover, this case study focuses on a single company. We lack information on the broad adoption rates of challenges faced by other Taiwanese companies. While this example demonstrates the potential of advanced lean practices, it also highlights the gap between current Brazilian practices and world-class operations. It raises a critical question. If Brazilian warehouses don't pursue similar integrated strategies, how far behind global standards will they fall, and what will be the long-term consequences for Brazil's position in global supply chains? The recommendations provided are logical steps towards improving lean implementation in Brazilian warehouses. However, we must critically assess their feasibility and potential impact. Developing a comprehensive, long-term lean strategy is crucial, but it requires a level of foresight and commitment that has been lacking thus far. How can we ensure this strategy doesn't become another well-intentioned but poorly executed initiative? Prioritizing workforce development is essential, but it's long-term investment in a sector that has shown a preference for quick wins. The suggestion to explore cost-effective ways to implement advanced technologies is pragmatic, but we must question whether this cautious approach is sufficient given the magnitude of the technological gap. Fostering a culture of continuous improvement is vital, but cultural change is notoriously difficult and slow. Benchmarking against global best practices is important, but it may be demoralizing given the current state of Brazilian warehouses. These recommendations provide a roadmap, but their success will depend on a fundamental shift in mindset and a willingness to make difficult, potentially disruptive changes in the Brazilian warehousing sector. In conclusion, the state of lean implementation in Brazilian warehouses is concerning. While there has been progress in basic practices, the gap between current operations and global standards is substantial and potentially widening. The focus on low investment practices, while understandable given economic constraints, risks condemning Brazilian warehouses to perpetual catch-up mode in a rapidly advancing global market. The transformation required goes beyond adopting new technologies or practices. It necessitates a fundamental shift in strategic thinking and organizational culture. However, we must also question whether traditional lean practices, even if fully implemented, are sufficient for future competitiveness. Should Brazilian warehouses be looking beyond current lean thinking to more radical innovations? The future of Brazilian warehousing hangs in the balance. Without decisive, strategic action, Brazilian warehouses risk becoming obsolete in the global supply chain. The challenge is clear. The question is whether Brazilian logistics leaders have the vision and courage to meet it.